Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Career Revolution podcast, where big ideas for careers start small and it's never too late to start. My name is Licia Dewing and I am your host and I'm a career strategist. Bit of admin before we get into my guest and introducing her. I would love for you all to subscribe to the podcast. When this episode runs as a LinkedIn Live, you can ask questions and engage in the comments. And most importantly, stay until the end because our special guest today is going to share her career revolutionary tip. Now, I'm the type of person that when I get a book, I read it cover to cover if it's interesting, and I bookmark it and I highlight it. And this is what I've been doing with Niven Postma's book. If you don't do politics, politics will do you. Niven's here to talk to us about what this is about and her career revolutionary story. Niven is known as a globally recognized expert in workplace politics, and she's the author of this book. She's currently pursuing her PhD in organizational behavior to understand how organizational politics are different for women. And the outcomes of her new research will possibly form the basis of her second book. Nothing like the pressure of saying it online and on a podcast. Niven has held a number of different executive positions since she was 29 in a career that has spanned multiple sectors and roles. Niven is a South African. She's here available for us to be able to engage with her. And more importantly than anything else, Niven is prepared to be on the Career Revolution podcast and share some of her insights around office politics. So without any further ado, Niven, welcome to the Career Revolution podcast.
Lisa, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for doing this work. I think every time I see you or I engage with you, I start off by saying thank you and God bless you for doing the work that you're doing on office politics, because certainly in my work as a career strategist and the work that I've been doing for the past 12 years is friction always comes in the form of politics within the office. It's always there. And it just isn't, it's something that we can't ignore. And yet at the same time, it's often something that many of us don't know what to do with. How do we navigate it? And I love the way your book breaks it down in such detailed ways. It gives us access to understanding the different types of politics that exist. And the very end, the self-assessments. Are you a candidate for political suicide? Do you need political surgery? All of these tangible ways to be able to understand how to navigate it. So let's kick off by you really taking us through why politics became such an important piece for you, why you've centered your work around it, and what was it that affected you that made you start looking at this thing called politics in your career?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Well, I think there's a long answer and a short answer. Let me give the short answer, which is that I got fired. And, getting fired does get your attention. And it really did get my attention. Look, it was dressed up as a retrenchment. It was dressed up as something very civilized and very gracious and very expensive for the company. But actually, it was only with hindsight and with my partner sitting me down and saying, Niv, you haven't just been retrenched. And I'm like, well, of course I've been retrenched. Here's the letter. Here's the package. No, Niv, you've been fired. And I laughed like a drain. I thought that was hilarious because I'd just gotten a great performance evaluation, was due a really nice bonus. And then slowly started to think, oh, actually, I think you're right. And that kind of experience can either make you double down and say, well, the problem was theirs and the problem is them, and make it about blame. Or ideally, as with my case, it can prompt some introspection and some reflection, not about the part of my career and of this job where I was a rock star, and I really was, but the parts of my career, and particularly this job, where I was hitting my head against a brick wall. And the brick wall was never technical. It was never about the subject at hand and my KPIs. The brick wall was political. And this is the stuff that's not written down. This is the stuff that HR doesn't take you through. And so, to my credit, I didn't just blame, I took some time to claim, and not just to claim, but to really investigate and understand a subject that I'd been utterly allergic to my whole career. In politics, I'm not here to play those stupid games. I'm here to do my job, and I do my job really well. And so in that reflection and claiming space, I then decided to start understanding a subject that, like I say, I'd been completely averse to. And in the understanding, I love the fact that you like the fact that the book is practical, because I thought, okay, so let me develop a course. And a few years later, I then did write the book. And in the course in the book, the litmus test for me was not, oh, is this intellectually interesting, but is this practically useful? And if I had written it and read it and applied it, would it have helped me? And if the answer was yes, I included it in the course. And if the answer was no, I pushed it to one side. I said, look, that's great for a PhD, but it wouldn't have helped me. And interestingly, 7 or 8 years later, what would have helped me, what could have helped me, seems to have struck a chord with a lot of people. Oh, yes, that's a level of insight. And those are some practical steps. And what one reader said about the book was that it's the warm slap that every leader needs. And I needed a few warm slaps, and I give people a few warm slaps. And in that, like I said, I think I make a few light bulbs go on.
And I remember first meeting you when you were invited by our mutual connection, Fortune Gamanya, who, funny enough, was also a guest on the Career Revolution podcast a number of years ago. And you spoke at her Women's Day breakfast. And that was when I just went, what? Hello, Niven. Let's do, and the other thing that I loved so much about that was how you used hashtag 1972. Like, let's normalize our age by talking about the year that we were actually born, which is radical nowadays when there are generations working with people who were born in years that felt like it was just yesterday,
Yes.
so amazing. And from that moment, I've followed you voraciously on LinkedIn and absolutely everywhere. So I'm fangirling here right now that you're actually on the podcast, but I love the way you shared because it hit you, you wanted to do something practical to go and help people out there. This didn't come from an academia space of the world needs more knowledge, because goodness knows in 2025, we are drowning in knowledge. We want practical application. We want to know what to do with the knowledge that we have. And on that note, I want to just mention to the listeners, because clearly everyone's going to get the book, but I like the way you start your lectures or workshops, and you ask the question, you sort of read the mood in the room. And your favorite question that you ask is, you say, how many of you think that you just go to the office to do your job and put in a good day's work, and that it's everyone else out there who's playing politics, but not me? And the response that you get from that is a warming understanding and completely nodding heads. So can you talk a little bit to that point, and then we're going to talk more about your careers. How many of us have this sense of almost feeling politics? Yeah, but it's never me. It's someone else. But in actual fact, the book normalizes that there's good politics, there's bad politics, there's different types of politics. And this is about engaging with our career, engaging with leadership, and really knowing we're here to play the game, whether it's good or bad, and we've got to play it. So that to me is so fascinating, that there is this percentage of us that goes, oh, no, it's not me. It doesn't happen to me. What are your thoughts about that in terms of, as you've continued to do the study, as you've written the book, your lectures and your training, do you sometimes find people that's never happens to our organization, when in fact it's pervasive everywhere?
Yeah, the phrase that I've started using is that politics are a feature, they're not a bug. And I think that kind of summarizes it all. Of course, bad politics, when they are a feature, can be immensely corrosive and toxic and desperately destructive. And I mean, honestly, Lisa, maybe I'm sure in your work as well, the same thing is true for you. Some of the stories that I've heard would make you weep for a week. In fact, I had a woman reach out to me last week. I had a call with her. My mother-in-law was visiting, and she heard my voice get more and more strident. And I was clearly getting quite angry. And I was getting angry because I was scared for this woman, really scared. And she was reaching out, asking for some help. And eventually I said to her, but can I tell you frankly what I think? I don't know you, but you have asked for my help and you have asked for my opinion. And I'm going to give it to you with all the intensity of fear and concern that I can muster. You are a colored female CA, so you have got options. I mean, a CA is a highly skilled person. From a gender and race point of view, you've got more options as well. And you are sitting in what I can only understand to be a toxic environment where people are having nervous breakdowns, people are dying. You are on antidepressant anxiety medication, and you are the main breadwinner with 2 young children, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old. And you are sounding like a battered wife because you are saying what women who are in abusive relationships say, which is, I am the problem. If I just tried harder and got it right tomorrow, it would be better. This is not going to get better. You have to get out of this. And so those kind of politics, I mean, those are completely abnormal. That's toxic, run like hell. But for everything else, this is normal. Okay. The informal building of relationships, the informal leveraging of relationships, influence, power, reputation, these building blocks of political intelligence, these building blocks of political capital, they are inherent anywhere you go, everywhere you go. And I've worked in the public sector, I've worked in the NGO sector, I've worked in the corporate sector. So this is not just a corporate thing, this is a workplace thing. And how you understand the importance of these things, how you build your political capital, how you deploy your political intelligence, or of course don't. This makes a profound difference, not just to your own career and your own sense of engagement, but to the ability of your team to be effective. And so, in my research, it's so interesting to see what other people have come up with in my literature review and the stuff that already exists out there. There's a lot of evidence of 2 things. First of all, the definition of politics has changed over the last 20 years in academia. This idea that it's only the destructive, toxic stuff that saps our energy and takes away time and resources from the things that need to happen. No. This can be perfectly ethical and constructive. So this idea that politics can be positive has grown in the academic literature. It hasn't necessarily filtered through to the rest of us. And then secondly, this idea that politics are only bad, maybe it's only those of us who are bad at it who see it as only bad, because the people who are good at it and who are able to use it for their own benefit, and like I say, the benefits of their team, they don't find the stress of this stressful at all because they recognize it as a fact, they get on with it, and they get on with using it in a way that benefits them, benefits their stress levels, and benefits their team. So there is so much around this that, like I say, we tend to see as only one thing. We throw the baby out with the bathwater. No, throw the toxic out as quickly as you can. It's a cancer, it's going to spread. If you're not in a position to rip it out from your team, then get yourself out of that situation. But for the rest, get on with it. Use the influence, use the relationships, build the relationships, not just in a one-way, transactional, extractive way. Because like anything that's just one way and extractive, that's not sustainable. But in a way that benefits you, benefits your organization. Well, there's tons of ways to do that. And to do that without selling your soul.
Do you feel that hearing and diving into your book as I have, do you feel that the disconnect with politics, or you refer to the one story angle of it, it's good or it's bad, or politics is always bad, it doesn't affect me. Do you feel that that has something to do with this work hard, climb the ladder of success, the one story that the world gave us? Don't figure out what your strengths are. Don't figure out what you love to do. Don't own your career and navigate it because you are the driver. Be owned by the company. Climb a ladder, and passively organizations are going to take you where you want to go, which we know. And, for the past 5 years, 10 years, for the past 15 years has been, the dissolution of that lie as companies and dynamics and ROIs and geopolitics play out. That simply prevent organizations from being able to look after us at all. I mean, it's that thing like, don't say, oh, we're all like family here. No, you're my work colleagues. My family are at home who I choose. So do you think that this disconnect and the fact that there, today in some of your workshops, there are people that go, politics, that it's not us, comes from that? That's a bit of a hangover, sort of the aftermath of being socialized to work hard for the company and not work hard for ourselves, defining career success, all of that stuff. I mean, look, that's what's given rise to my industry, career coaching, career strategy. What are your thoughts on that?
So I suppose my first thought is this is not a new thing. Rosa Beth Moss-Cantor from Harvard Business School wrote about it in the 70s, that it's easier to talk about money and sex at work than power and politics. And yet it is the air that we breathe and is absolutely, as we've already said, pervasive and inescapable. And yet I think for multiple reasons, some of which you've mentioned, we all as human beings love to think about how the world should be, how leadership should be. And Jeffrey Pfeffer at Stanford has written incredibly well about this, but he's not the only one. This idea of the just world, if we are just good people and do things right, things will work out. Well, in an ideal world, sign me up for that world. But we're not in that world. And I'm always very clear when I say to people, just because we're not in an ideal world, and just because we shouldn't lose sight of how the world can be better, does not mean that we tip over into cynicism. Frankly, life is too short, and especially in the context of South Africa, work is too precious. How many people in this country are not just unemployed, but are unemployable? So those of us who have the privilege of work, yes, unless you are in a toxic environment, again, I think cynicism is really something we should avoid as much as possible. And I think often cynicism is an armor that we put on because we've been disappointed and disillusioned. So I get where cynicism can come from, and I think that cynicism is a pity. But equally, idealism, naivety around idealism is a pity and is a risk as well. Somewhere in the middle, can we have informed pragmatism? I had somebody reach out to me on LinkedIn the other day, and their title was An Optimist Without Illusions. I love that. Yeah. Can we look at things squarely and understand how the world is and how people are, for better or for worse? And in that, get pragmatic, get effective, without illusions around, okay, well, if we just try hard enough, this is how the world will be if we pretend hard enough. Like I said, I'm not saying don't work for a better world, don't work for better workplaces. This is what informs everything that I do. But can we also understand how the world is? And where we find ourselves as people, and we will probably always find ourselves as people. And I think this is not a new thing. And one of the hangovers, I think, particularly for women, is we get socialized in the first, 12, 16 years if we go to university, to treat work like school. So work really hard, put our head down, and somebody's going to notice and give us an A. And this is how school works, but it's not how work works. Work has got multiple competing objectives, multiple competing perspectives and priorities. It is a place of conflict, not necessarily destructive conflict, not necessarily dreadful, toxic conflict, but there's only so much to go around. So much time, attention, energy, resources, opportunities. And so, of course, there's competition and conflict. And in that, the informal of politics inevitably has to come into play. I mean, I've had delegates say, even in our own families, we've got politics. So yes, this maneuvering for attention. And to come back to your first question, when we do it, when we do this maneuvering and when we benefit from it, then we call it strategy. It's only when other people do it and we don't feel like we've benefited. It's politics. It's all politics. It's all politics. And understanding that workplaces are as much about the informal as they are the formal. And recognizing that actually in some organizations, the informal carries even more weight than the formal. This is such a light bulb moment if you want to understand it and just accept it and then get effective in that informal space. But I think if we are, and so many of us do, and I'm exhibit A, if we treat work like school, but that's not right and that's not fair, and this is not what my job description says. Okay, well, your job description says one thing, But all those white spaces between the words on your job description, that's the politics. Okay. So look at your whole description, the words and the white spaces between the words.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that analogy of work is not school. And I mean, from a schooling perspective, I've worked with as a career strategist, I work with both men and women, not necessarily one or the other, because that's the work that I love to do, and I'm able to support people. And often one of the biggest frictions that my male clients come to me with is the frustration of feeling disappointed by their leadership, or the frustration of not being seen by their leadership, or there's obviously many internal frictions and frustrations. But a particular client said to me, who'd come from a certain type of school where leadership was phenomenal, where school was amazing, and where he absolutely excelled. And that wasn't the case in his organization. But on the outside looking in, it was the type of organization where everyone wanted to be in, and everyone thought that would happen. And he was able to say to me, which was great identification of what he needed to do to move forward, was simply, all my years at school, I looked up to my leadership, and they always had my best interest at heart. And he was grieving the loss of the leadership that he hoped for, that he was set up to expect. And it was complex, and it continues to be complex, I suppose.
No, look, I think in my experience, that's the biggest damage that happens in cultures, is not to walk into a particular kind of culture that's not great, if that's what you expect and that's what gets sold to you. So I can think of a friend of mine who started as an investment banker on Wall Street, and she was told straight, listen, you're going to work 80 to 100 hours. You're going to be a slave. We're going to extract the most out of you. But at the end, you're going to have a lot of money and a lot of options and a lot of contacts. So are you in or you out? Now, I mean, I don't know about you, Lisa, but if somebody had said that to me, I would have said, thanks, I think I'm out. But for her, it was fine. I'm young. I'm highly qualified. I'm immensely ambitious. If this is what you're promising, I'm up for it. And that's exactly what she got. And after a few years, she left with everything that they said, a lot of money, a lot of options, a lot of contact. And I found her experience of that really fascinating, because she didn't find it toxic. She didn't find it exhausting and all the things we would normally associate with a culture like that, because what she was promised was what she got. I think where most of us really struggle is the dissonance between what we're promised, especially with a brand that positions itself and everyone buys into, being quite exceptional. You buy into the normative, same as with leadership, you buy into what it could be and should be and apparently is. And then you kind of crash down to earth with, but hold on, the gap between that and this is so huge. It's that gap, that dissonance, that kind of crashing down to earth that I think really does people's heads and hearts in.
Absolutely. And I mean, the sort of the actual reality away from the glossy brochure. When I coach candidates on interview practice and sort of interview preparation, where there is always an opportunity to speak to the outgoing or the exiting or somebody in the team who may have recently left the company, that's an important part of the investigation process. And I always say to my clients, say to them, don't sell me on the company. What's the worst thing that I could expect? And between that and what the sale is, then there's that leveraged, as you point out, your friend at Wall Street, give me the real story. Give me what it actually is so that I understand. So we can enter the workplace as adults, define success on our own terms, and decide whether we're up for it or not, rather than, as you say, there's an immense amount of dissonance. So it's almost like a collective growing up. In a sense that leadership internally need to do and we need to do. So there's that beautiful analogy. Niven, you talk about PQ, not just EQ, not just IQ, PQ, and you talk specifically about 4 ways that you encourage people. Can we kind of run through that quite quickly in terms of take us, what is PQ and what are those 4 ways that we can build on them?
So I think the 4 things that you need to get right, and this is what I cover in workshops, is first of all, you've got to build political will. And most people are quite queasy about the mention of politics. And so political will comes from busting the 5 myths that I've spoken about and written about, and people can look those up. So can I understand this differently? Can I want to get involved? Then it's about political skill. And that's building up, as I've mentioned, your relationships. Who knows you? Who's in the room for you when you're not in the room? Building up your influence, the informal, unofficial, behind the scenes ways that you can make things happen. Certainly building up your power and your authority, because yes, generally where you are on the organogram matters. It's not a guarantee, but it does play a role. And then building up your reputation. What are you known for, and what is your reputation other than trust at scale? And God forbid it be distrust at scale, because that's a reputation you need to rehabilitate. Then it's about absolutely making sure you avoid political mistakes. Don't drive your career off of a cliff. And there are so many ways of doing this. And one of the quotes that I love apparently came from Einstein, where he was apparently asked, what's the difference between genius and stupidity? To which, again, he apparently replied, well, genius has its limits, which is about right. Because, of course, when it comes to the ways that we can be totally stupid around our career, I mean, I get new examples every week. And then the last one is to build your political strategy. So this stuff is opaque and complex and seemingly hypocritical and unfair until you understand what's going on. And when you understand what's going on, because you've got political will and political skill, well, then, like all strategies, what do you want? Where are you? And how are you going to maneuver and build your way? Strategy by GPS, it'll adjust and you'll need to adjust. But from where you are to where you need to be, thinking about a whole bunch of things. What's your competitive advantage? Who's your competition? How are you going to focus and use your finite time and energy to get there? And actually start to deliver against it. And, focus on what you want, focus on what you're going to do, focus on what you don't want and what you're not going to do. And so often in workshops, people say to me, this sounds like a lot of work. And I mean, of course, it is a lot of work, but I think particularly the more senior you get, this is the work. This is the real work. The technical work is being done by people below you. And if you are successfully transitioning and growing in your career, you are leaving behind the comfort zone of the technical, which you have as the technical expert. As the leader, you are having to step into the political. And a lot of new managers, and I'm sure you see it, Lisa, 100 times, stay with what they know. And so they micromanage and they stay with the technical because it's what they're familiar with and it's what they've done for 10 or 15 years in their career. That transition, which is as much a technical reinvention as it is an identity reinvention of moving into the managerial, means you move into the political, means you move into the navigating the space to get the resources and attention for the technical people below you. So those are roughly the 4 steps.
So kind of like know the game, gear up, and be prepared to play it in a sense. There's that analogy that business owners and entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, we talk about working in our business or working on our business. Same applies for your corporate career. You're working in your corporate career or you're working on it. And this is what the working on is, right? It's understanding.
I think that's a lovely way of putting it. Absolutely right. Yeah.
Niven, so amazing. I wanted to talk a bit about visibility and how that connects to the political insurance in a way. And I mean visibility as in not just career visibility, reputation, but online visibility, because never has there been a better time than 2025 with everything that's available free. And I mean, LinkedIn is doubling down, 1 billion members, it's growing, it's expanding, whether it becomes pay to play or not, who knows? We're not the decision makers, but we're all here. And I love everything that you do on LinkedIn. You have following, you have gravitas, and you have community. How do you feel visibility would help? And if I take you back to the analogy that you shared of the call where you had the woman, the CA with the 2 small children, and almost kind of, it's me. I'm the one that needs to change something. If she had the strong visibility of who she was and what she was doing, she does start to get that, well, I've got options. I just had somebody from the competitor reach out to me and so forth. So we know that LinkedIn becomes important when people start to think about where to from their career. But in my work, I mean, this is the hill I'll quietly lie down on, is You need LinkedIn now. You don't need it when you think you need it. You need it
Yeah.
now, and you need visibility now. So what is the visibility piece? How does that play out for you from a politics perspective? What are your thoughts there?
Look, I think that's an important part of things. I often say optics are politics and politics are optics. So what is seen and what is understood is as important as what's real, and sometimes, frankly, more important than what's real. And so managing your visibility is incredibly important. I think I would probably take a few steps back, though, as well, and say for a lot of people, it's about giving themselves permission to own their stuff, own their impact, own their visibility. And if you don't give yourself permission because you're just trying to play small, or you're just trying to get on with the work, and you don't see the value of your impact, if you don't even understand the value of your impact, it's very difficult to have any visibility because you're so busy, like I say, not giving yourself that permission slip. And then, but once you've given yourself that permission slip, then I think you've got to be quite deliberate and quite aware of the context. So absolutely building up your visibility, not just externally, but certainly internally. Because of course, if you give yourself permission, you give yourself permission in multiple forums to do this. But thinking about how you do it, to what end and most effectively, is contextual, is subjective and personal. So giving yourself options, giving yourself traction and momentum in your company, outside your company, absolutely. And sometimes it can backfire. I mean, I can think of someone who was very good at building her external visibility, and actually it came back to bite her. I don't know if it was a convenient excuse or in fact it was starting to cause some concern. But the feedback that she got from the company was, you're so busy building your external brand, you seem to have forgotten that you work for us and this is your primary job. And so, like I said, I mean, that could have been a very convenient excuse, or it could have started to cause some understandable concern that she didn't listen to and saw her brand as bigger than her role, saw her brand as bigger than her job. And so, as with all things, the virtue and the value is somewhere between the two vices. Too much of a good thing, too little of a good thing. Both of these things are risks and opportunity costs. Understanding that sweet spot for yourself and in the context that you're in, this takes some figuring out. But yes, one of the things I say in my lectures often is invisible contributions have no political value. Invisible contributions have no political value. And that's as true in the company, in your team, outside of your team, as it is outside of the company and on social media. With, of course, recognizing that a lot of companies are very strict about how you engage from a social media perspective, and you ignore that and build your own brand at your peril.
Absolutely, yeah. Many of the senior executives, particularly South African senior executives that I work with, are not prepared to go. Visibility to them is like, it's a mindset, I don't have the time, or everyone's watching, what am I going to say? And that's the kind of, how can I say it? An imposter. So yes, it's owning, but it's knowing what you want to owning it, and then being visible. And then I have, amazing women who specifically will seek me out because they say, I know that a big portion of the work that you do is the project yourself stage, and that is what I want. So we always double check, haven't signed any social media policies, anything recently. And number two, are you prepared for what's going to come? Because you're going to get the, oh, I saw you did this, or, well, we all know where you went, and you are going to get those kind of comments if the very reason, if the visibility that you seek is part of the solution that's going to help you leave or make the decision to, have more options. It always comes with that. And in fact, I mean, even in 2025, some of my clients will say, somebody from the executive suite asked me if I'm looking for another job because they see me posting on LinkedIn, and I'm like, oh, with tears in my eyes. Can we tell them that it's not, that's such a parochial view, yet it is still, what is the view? So interesting in terms of that visibility piece.
Yeah, and look, I mean, all choices, all strategies have got trade-offs. So making a stand, building a brand has upsides, it has trade-offs. It has opportunities, it has risks. And equally, so too does not building a brand, all manner of opportunity costs and risks. So understand, and as with politics, as with building your visibility, as with any strategy, what are the risks and opportunities here? What makes sense in the context where I am and where I'm wanting to get to? and knowing as much as I can, let me start. But whatever I do, make sure that I'm doing it from an informed perspective and understand why I'm trying to do this and what might go wrong, but equally what might go right. Because risk has got two definitions. We are always necessarily, understandably, I worked at the central bank, for heaven's sake. I understand a lot about risk as it applies to organizations.
Yeah.
The risk that bad things will happen, 100%. But there's an equal and opposite category of risk, and this is not my thumbsuck kumbaya idea. This is technically the equal and opposite category of risk. The risk that good things will not happen. And so thinking these things through, weighing them up, and then eventually making the best decision that you can at the time that you have to with the information that you have, and starting somewhere.
Absolutely. Niven, just a bit of some reflection before we round up our conversation. If there was a piece of advice that you could give your younger self, what would it be? Your younger career self?
I think two pieces. The one was one that my dad said, and bless him, I just rolled my 16-year-old eyes and said, that's not true. Of course it is true. And he said, look, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And I said, that's not right. That's not fair. I don't think that that's the way the world should be. And maybe it's not the way the world should be, but it is the way the world is. And it's not just about what I can get from that, but what I can give from that. It's not just about what I can take, but how I can pay it forward in who I know. So I wish I had said to my dad, tell me more, Dad. And the second one was the advice I give to people now all the time, which is some of the most important decisions of your career are going to be made when you're not in the room. None of them who's in the room for you and what are they saying. This is, a continuation of not just what you know, but who you know. These things are incredibly true, and you ignore them at your self-righteous peril. Let me put it that way, because I was self-righteous as a 16-year-old.
I love that. I love that. Had that younger teenage mind of ours had have said, tell me more, explain more, the opportunity of amazing wisdom from the elder folk. So, I mean, largely this book is just a clarion call for looking at our careers from a sense of complete ownership and that sense of kind of adulthood, coming into seeing it for what it is. Work is not family. Yes, they might say nice things. Yes, it's got this history or this old school tie connotation, or the outside looking in, it looks glossy and nice, but just go in with eyes wide open. A beautiful, beautiful clarion call. So thank you so much for this. Thank you for the work that you continue to do. How can we support you? What can we do? We're all going to be following you on LinkedIn if we are not already doing so. What else? What else could we offer in terms of support and reverberating the message?
Well, look, I have tons of resources on my website. I have a LinkedIn learning course that's about to hit 50,000 people, and I get messages every week saying how useful it is. So, and this week it got to a 4.9 out of 5 star rating, which I was very thrilled about. So there's tons of stuff where, in fact, I'm not sure how you can support me, but I can continue to support you and the listeners. I've got scorecards around how politically intelligent you are, how politicized your workplace is. And as my sisters said to me, younger sisters do keep you humble, that I love the sound of my own opinion, which I do. So I love sharing them in keynotes and workshops. And if you'd like to know more, my agent is always available to take a booking.
Wonderful. Thank you, Niven. And all of those links will be available to be found in the comments. Just one last ending piece in terms of defining success and our knowledge and understanding. And now that I've read this book cover to cover, now that we've all heard so much, from an advice, if you could give somebody advice in terms of how to define success, knowing what we all know about politics being part of the game, how would you direct somebody in that regard? What would your thoughts be there?
I think my best advice, I share a video often at the end of my speeches or at the end of a class, and it's from The Office, the US version of The Office. So anybody who knows this will know the characters. If not, you can find it on YouTube. But Michael, Steve Carell, asks Dwight, what's the best piece of advice I ever gave you? And Dwight says, don't be an idiot. changed my life. And then he looks at the camera and he says, whenever I'm about to do something, I think, would an idiot do that? And if they would, I do not do that thing. So I think this is fantastic closing words. Don't be an idiot about this stuff. Don't wish it away. Don't think that only psychopaths and sycophants play it. Don't think it doesn't make a difference to your career. Don't think that this is a trait that other people have and it's something that you missed out on. And don't think that you can escape it. You can't. This is inevitable. This is a key leadership skill, but it's a leadership skill that we don't talk about, we don't acknowledge, because we've tarred everything with one brush. What a lost opportunity. What a huge mistake. So don't be an idiot, would be my best advice.
Fantastic. Niven, thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your work. As I said, every time I see you, I'm thanking you and going, oh, hallelujah. Really, thank you. And thank you for sharing so openly and honestly here on the Career Revolution. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you. And round 2, when that second book is back.
Lovely. I look forward to it.
Fantastic.